Magandang araw Pilipinas at maunlad na araw mga ka-MDC. Hatid namin sa inyo mga balita at impormasyong makamasa, maka-agrikultura at makakaunlaran. Ako po si Dominic Almirez at sama-sama nating tahakin ang daang aktibo at progresibo dito sa Radyo Kaunlaran. Radyo Kaunlaran. Hi there. We're not going to discuss how to do that yet. What you have just heard is a sneak peek of an introduction of a radio broadcast simulation. And before we create something like that, our prior concern should focus first on these two steps in radio production process. By the way, I'm Dominic, and our main objective here is to discuss how important these two initial steps are. Most of our inputs are lifted from our main reference, the DEVC 206 module, some sample statistical data from the Philippine Statistics Authority, actual radio broadcast from a Facebook Live of Radio Pilipinas Lucena, and some archive files from DepEd Calabarzon Pivot TV. My groupmate Precious Basco reported to us the planning stage of the production, where she mentioned that we need to finalize first the radio format if our concern is to have a full blown news, a magazine, a talk show, a drama, or a documentary. After considering those aspects, the next thing that we should prepare are the radio materials that will align with our radio format. First, in gathering the radio materials, let's remember GIG. Yes, GIG. Go to the library or concerned agencies, institutions, and organizations, interview subject matter specialists, and gather people's opinions on certain topics. In going to the library and other concerned agencies, it will always take a lot of our time. Everything should be planned carefully and legally. Even though our intent is purely to communicate development for the masses, for the people, it will also boil down how we planned our gathering process. So, we formally send a letter or an email that is specifically addressed to the office of concern, and we should not forget to indicate our main concern, which is data gathering. Since we already identified our format, we know what we need to gather. We need to make sure also of this next word.
Connections, Mr. Montenegro. Connections that you don't have. Conne-
Yes, connections. That means contacts, resource persons that we personally know, that we can personally know, or can be an acquaintance from a particular agency that we want to connect with. Because if we know that they are significant in our radio show, they are essential. Also, when gathering radio materials, it is also important to be familiar with the different agencies and offices that are significant to our topic of interest. You might also want to create and keep your own DCL or Devcom contacts list so you can have an instant resource person that you can connect with in times of quick communication to an agency. Here, we have sample raw materials compiled by Mr. Joshua Miguel Suarez, our classmate here in MDC, and he's a radio broadcaster from Radio Pilipinas Lucena. Included in this sample, we have the annual survey of Philippine business and industry. And here we have from the Philippine Statistics Authority the highlights of the 2019 to 2020 integrated survey on labor and employment results and a demographic profile of Quezon Province. Let's try to dig deeper to this material. Notice that this material has a legal basis. That means, as DevCom practitioners, we also need to familiarize ourselves with some Republic Acts, executive orders, Batas Pambansa, and even the ongoing readings of bill that might turn into Republic Acts soon that can directly affect our audience. Included also here in the sample radio material are endless figures that we also need to interpret. Yes, as DevCom practitioners, we should also know how to interpret basic data and how it can directly affect our audience. Like the data provided in this page, presented here are the top 5 most populous cities and municipalities in Quezon by the year 2020. Apart from gathering data from agencies and concerned offices, which is a top-down approach of research, next examples you will see here are forms of bottom-up movement of data gathering.
Kayo po nanay bilang magulang, ano po yung tulong na ibinibigay niyo sa inyong anak sa paggamit ng module?
Binabasa ko po muna tapos saka ko po ina-explain sa kanya. Yung mga, ang hindi lang din naman po namin medyo minsan maintindihan yung pong mga picture kapag malabo. So hinahanap po namin sa YouTube yung may nag-explain naman po doon.
Pag halimbawa po meron kayong hindi maintindihan, medyo malinaw, ano po yung role na ginagawa ng teacher para nang sa ganun po ay matugunan yung inyong pong problemang kinakaharap?
Ayun, kapag meron po hindi maintindihan, pwede naman po magtanong kay teacher, palagi naman po siyang naka-online.
Madali naman po yung komunikasyon ng
Apo.
teacher at kayo po papunta po sa inyong anak.
Opo.
Kayo po nanay bilang magulang,
This interview was conducted last March 2021 by the DepEd Calabarzon Pivot TV, where we need to identify and present the raw experiences of students and the parents during the first year of implementation of distance learning.
Ginagabi na ako ng panggagawa ng print kasi lagi na lang nakikinig namin na ang mga teacher walang ginagawa. So nagpo-post ako ng My Day, na nagpiprint ako. Totoo yun, hindi kami nagbibiro. Manggagawa ng kung anong ginagawa ng teacher, pinupost ko yun ma'am. Parang bang imobis na ginagabi na ako ng panggagawa ng print.
Now, this example is one of my favorites because here, teacher Alona from Mayo Elementary School, Lucena City, shares how she exactly feels during the chaotic and traumatic pandemic school year, where teachers like me almost cannot find a window to rest because of the bulk of modules that we need to check while people only see us relaxed. Using this kind of soundbite, yes, soundbite gives our radio material a more dramatic, relevant, yet authentic element of production because of the rawness of the emotions and the candid delivery of easy to understand words.
The three words that I can use in describing Pivot is one, it's flexible, it's adaptive, and at the same time, aligned to the call of sulong edukalidad.
Ini-encourage ko din po ang lahat na tingnan, suriin yung ating mga nagawa pa dahil hindi pa ito isang tagumpay. This is still a work in progress. So if I'm going to describe Pivot 4A as a response to this pandemic, I would say that this has something to do with a reform, a response, and at the same time, a result.
The three words.
The first one was Mr. Hob Zape. He's a former chief of Curriculum and Learning Management Division of DepEd Calabarzon, together with Director Wilfredo Cabral, the former director of DepEd Calabarzon. They were presenting to us here the first publication of the Pivot 4A self-learning materials. These are first to be used in the region that time and first in the country during the first pandemic school year, that was year 2019 to 2020. Apart from going to agencies and offices for statistical data and information, this bottom up approach, which is data gathering via interview, are also integral parts of news gathering. Despite all of these materials being initially provided for TV, the process used here or the processes used are essentially similar and are still useful and significant in fact finding and giving backbone to our radio materials. However, this kind of material will only be possible if we know what to prepare before we conduct this kind of interview. So let's take a look at this example. In this material, this is an example of an interview guide questions by Joshua Miguel Suarez for his interview talk with Ms. Aliana Lagasca, the chairperson for the Youth for Mental Health Coalition. These ones that you watched, the ones that you watched earlier, are pre-produced for a TV airing, while the next example that you're about to see is an actual live interview via Radio Pilipinas using this interview guide. Let's watch this.
Ayan, unang-una, no, Ate Yana, thank you very much sa iyong pagtanggap sa aming imbitasyon. Bagamat January 1, holiday ngayon, ay bukas ang Youth for Mental Health para sa ating himpilan. At syempre, ikaw, naku, napakasipag po nito ni Ate Yana. And on her own words nga, no, meron na siyang 5-year-old na baby. Ito nga yung Youth for Mental Health Coalition. So, may mga hindi pa masyado nakakaalam or nakakaintindi what is the Youth for Mental Health Coalition. So, Miss Aliana, ano ho ba itong why Youth for Mental Health Coalition, why for MHC? Tama ba? At ano yung ating mga ginagawa?
Yes po, maraming salamat. Ang Youth for Mental Health Coalition po, mas kilala po kami sa tawag ng Y for MH, ay isang organisasyon ng mga volunteer na kabataan, no? Mula sa mga estudyante hanggang sa mga young professionals, mula sa iba't ibang estado at syempre iba't ibang gender, iba't ibang kultura. Lahat naman tayo ay Pilipino, na kabataang Pilipino, no, na naglalayong gusto talagang mabago ang estado ng kalusugang pangkaisipan sa ating bansa.
Ayan, unang-una.
Now, let's imagine that Joshua didn't use any interview outline. What would happen? All right. Even though scripting an interview is not advisable, sometimes this cannot be avoided because we need to ensure accuracy of statements on top of the preference of the interviewee to have script. Also, creating an interview guide or script can make us calculate how long or brief the duration of the entire talk session would be. And finally, we need to remember that the interview should still sound conversational and spontaneous. Now, here are the things that we need to prepare prior to our interview. It is a must to have our well written series of questions. We should always put in mind what our audiences need to know and what they need to understand. When there is a need to simplify technical terminologies or jargons, it is also our duty as a researcher or scriptwriter to reword such jargons into simpler words for the benefit of a larger audience. Remember, materials should always be mass laden. And what you need, you have audio video recorder, and you should also have your reporter's notebook where you can write anything that you deemed important during the course of the interview. Also, a bonus, now that video calls and conferencing is available online, we can arrange an early online meeting with our resource person. Just make sure that we follow the basic online meeting etiquette. This part is supposed to be discussed by the next group, so allow me to only enumerate to you the types of script for radio. We have a news script, interview script, public service announcements, drama scripts, and continuities. From all the presented examples, what did you notice? Exactly. This step can make or break your coverage. Imagine that you are cooking or you're preparing your favorite dish, but you are lacking some ingredients. Of course, you yourself will definitely look for more. That means a good coverage delivers the necessary message that is made possible by substantial research and interview. Bago natin pagandahin ang music and all the styles that we want to incorporate in our radio program, we need to make sure that we have researched thoroughly. And that's the end of my report. I hope you learned something. Maraming salamat.